So the season 1 patch is finally here. We cannot make a new character until Thursday. However, they dropped the entire patch, which gave us 6 brand new uniques, 7 new aspects, and a whole bunch of buffs and nerfs. More on the buffs and nerfs after. I'm going to focus primarily on Necromancer because I don't have as much knowledge for the other 4 classes as I do for Necromancer, and I don't want to give you bad information. So we're going to focus on Necromancer only after I get done with the brand new uniques and aspects. And I'm going to show you why the Necromancer nerfs are not as bad as everybody's making them out to be. So let's hop into uniques first. Starting off, we have a brand new Uber unique, which is called the Avarian Spear of Lycandir, which gives you a random shrine effect for 20 seconds after killing an elite with a 30-second cooldown. So you're going to have a 10-second period in between where you're not going to have a random shrine effect. Now, this is a staff, so druids and sorcerers rejoice because nobody else can use them. So this is a uber unique specifically for druids and sorcerers. It's going to have the same drop chance as a Shaco, so don't expect it to drop throughout the season and rejoice like crazy if one actually does. Barbarian is getting Azarath, which is basically going to have your core skills are going to have up to a 20% chance to freeze enemies for 3 seconds. So I don't know as much about barbarians, but I don't know why a freeze would be something they would want. Unless they have something where it really scales off of crowd-controlled enemies, I'm not sure. Druid's going to be getting a new unique called Flesh Render, which makes Debilitating Roar and Bloodhowl deal X damage based on the item power of the weapon to nearby poisoned enemies. So if you have an 820 item power weapon, it's going to deal much more damage than anything below 820. So looks like it could be cool. Plus the new aspect druids get. Looks like these two could like really I guess synergize well together, but we'll have to see with some of the druid builds that come out. Necromancer, Lidless Wall. So while you have an active Bone Storm, hitting an enemy that's outside of the radius of your Bone Storm is kind of small radius around you. So any enemy that is outside of the range of your Bone Storm, if you hit them with anything, so I guess Bone Spear, Sever, Blight, doesn't matter, whatever you hit them with, it's going to create a Bone Spear over in that section. 25% chance to spawn it. However, each of your sacrifice bonuses that you get increases that by an additional 25% and increases the total number of your Bone Storms by 1. So if you have all 3 minions sacrificed, your Golem, your Skeletal Mages, and your Skeletal Warriors, if you have all 3 of those sacrificed, you're going to have 100% chance to spawn your Bone Storm plus 3 additional Bone Storms. So you're going to have like the whole screen just covered in Bone Storms if you have mobs all over. So that's going to be really cool. Rogues. Penetrating Shot has a 30 to 80% chance to fire an arrow that bounces off walls and scenery. Hitting enemies from behind with Penetrating Shot will make them vulnerable for 3 seconds. That's kind of cool. They just get free vulnerability. Plus rogues are going to be doing absolutely disgusting damage because while a lot of the other classes got nerfed, rogues kind of just laughed it off because poison rogues are going to be chilling. Poison rogues are going to be probably the meta of season 1. That's just my take. And the occultist got the absolute worst unique ever. So basically you gain the teleport enhancement for free, and when you evade using teleport enhancement, you are taken to a random location. Yes, random location. The game gets to, you roll the dice and the game gets to decide which way you go. I don't like that. So yeah, as you can see right here, Azarath and Flesh Render being the druid one, Azarath is the warrior one, have flat damage which scales with your item power. So at 820 item power, Azarath will do 3359 to 6718 damage. Seems okay. Again, I don't know why warriors want to freeze stuff, but if you know, please leave a comment down below as to why. I would like to know, and I don't. So if you do know, please let me know. That way I don't wonder for the future and then decide never to make a barbarian, because why the hell would I want to freeze stuff? All right, new aspects. Audacity. When there are at least 5 close enemies, stun them for 4 seconds, can only occur once every 20 seconds. Stuns got nerfed a little while ago, so I don't think this is all that great of an aspect. Next up we have Craven. So gain 40% increased movement speed when moving away from slow or chilled enemies. You pair this with the Penitent Greaves and you're going to be just zooming around the goddamn map. Could be pretty cool whenever it's paired with Penitent Greaves. However, you do have to give up one of your other aspects to have a movement aspect. So, I mean, it seems kind of niche, and if you have a free aspect where you're just like, I don't have anything to put here, I guess you could put that there, but realistically, an offensive or a defensive aspect would probably be more beneficial. So, yeah. Barbarian, this one's cool. So, Ancestral Charge. Whenever you charge an enemy, it'll call forth 4 Ancients that charge, dealing, if you have a max roll, 100% of normal damage. Each of them is going to do 100% of normal damage from what I can tell. So, this is a very, very chunky hit and charge. It kind of reminds me of the old charge build in Diablo 3, Raycors. I think it's the Raycor set. Super fun. You just basically just charge at enemies and then they die. It's really fun. All right, Druid Subterranean. So this one kind of pairs with that unique that they got. Poison's Creeper active also casts Landslide in a circle around you. Earth skills deal 20% increased damage to poisoned enemies. So they're very much focusing, trying to get Druids to play more poison builds. I think they're all just going to play Tornado build anyways, because it really is super, super strong anyways. That would be my guess. All right, Rogue. Poison Rogues, man. Poison Rogues are so happy right now. Every third cast of Puncture is poison imbued with 150% of normal potency. Sure. Okay. One of the lead developers at Blizzard for Diablo, Rogue has to be their class. I'm done. Rogue in WoW and Rogue in Diablo are loved by the developers. So if you play a Rogue, awesome. You are going to have so much fun this season. I'm not going to go into the buffs and nerfs of Rogues because, again, I can't speak very well to them. I would go check out, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Woodgeo? Woodgeo? I don't know. If I remember, I'll leave his channel linked in the description, say, Rogues, go here. And I'll link it to that if I can remember. But yeah, he is definitely the person to go to for Rogue because he is probably one of the best rogues out there. He was the first rogue that I ever saw that soloed a world boss back at level 25 in the beta. So the dude's insane on Rogue. Sorcerer. After spending 100 mana, your next firewall is free to cast and will destroy incoming small missiles. Yeah, they don't like Sorcerer. Blizzard does not like Sorcerer at all. I'm sorry, sorcerers. All right, let's go over to the Necromancer buffs and nerfs, because there are buffs as well. So don't think that it's all nerfs because everyone's screaming that Necromancers are dead. So, initiates Decompose slow, increased to 50%. That's whatever. That's just a build. It's a basic skill. It doesn't really matter. Paranormal Sever required for vulnerable, reduced from 4 to 3. You should be making sure that your enemies are vulnerable before casting Sever. Sever does a lot of damage, but it needs them to be vulnerable to do the correct damage. So you're going to want to Corpse Tendril them in, which will make them vulnerable, and then you cast Severs onto them, and your Severs will do 2 to 7 million damage if you have the correct aspects and build set up together. So Severs can actually do a crap ton of damage already. You don't want to be using Severs to make an enemy vulnerable, because you're going to run out of essence just trying to get them vulnerable when Corpse Tendrils will do it, and then you just use Decompose to get Corpse Tendrils back faster. So yeah, this is kind of a null point right here. Enhanced Blood Surge healing increased from 2.5 to 3% of max life. This is cool. Blood is the tanky build, especially Blood Surge builds are very tanky, and this just made them tankier. So anyone who's playing a Blood Surge build, rejoice. Hard to play at max level, like in the higher Nightmare Dungeon tiers. Blood really falls off, so maybe this will make them tanky enough so they can stand there and keep pounding to finally kill the mobs. I'm not sure. Enhanced Blood Lance damage reduction for piercing reduced from 15 to 10. Yeah, they killed Bloodlance on July 7th, and until they undo this Bloodlance builds, I can't get my head around playing one. I'll try, because some of these buffs that they are putting in might make it so that the nerf that they put in July 7th won't feel as bad. But Bloodlance, back before they did nerf it, felt really cool because, you know, there was so many Bloodlances just bouncing around the pack of mobs. that it was just doing absolutely insane amounts of damage, but it also crashed the servers. So again, I'll try Bloodlance sometime later on in the season. What I'll probably end up doing is I'll probably make 3 different necromancers. One for blood builds, one for shadow builds, and one for bone builds. That way, whenever it comes time to make different builds, I'm not having to do a full respec on one necromancer over and over and over again, because it gets really, really expensive. And I'm always broke because I'm always trying out and making new builds, because to me, making new builds with the class is extremely fun. So it's what I enjoy doing. Bone Prison initial essence gain increased from 15 to 25. I don't know anyone who's using Bone Prison in the way of using it to generate essence, but I mean, I guess if you have it in your build, that's kind of cool. You get a little extra essence back. Abhorrent Iron Maiden healing increased from 5% to 7% of max life. That's kind of nice. Golems move faster and unhindered through enemies when their cooldown is activated. So if you're using the Iron Golem and you have it, the second point where it basically makes it so they can slam their enemies and make all of them that they hit with their slam vulnerable, instead of them getting body blocked by enemies, they'll just run straight through to the point where you said to use their slam and hit the ground. So it's actually going to make golems a little bit more consistent with doing what you want them to do. So that's actually pretty nice. Supreme Blood Wave is going to leave blood orbs earlier. Okay, again, blood builds are really tanky anyways because they're constantly spawning blood orbs and they get fortified when they collect the blood orbs. So, I mean, it's going to make your blood builds even tankier in the long run. Raise Skeleton, Corpse Explosion, and Corpse Tendril range for auto-targeting corpses on mouse and keyboard increased by 50%. So, currently, let's say this little picture right here of the Diablo patch notes is a corpse. If you were over here with your mouse, that corpse isn't exploding. You needed to be like here-ish. Like you had to be within like an inch or so on your screen of the corpse, or else it just wouldn't target it. Now it's going to basically make it so that you can be a little further away. It's a quality of life thing, really. And also whenever there's like huge packs of mobs, you have to take your eyes off of the fight and what's going on to find a corpse to corpse tendril or something. So this is just it's a quality of life. You just got to put your mouse in the general vicinity and then hit corpse explosion or corpse tendril, and it'll just do its thing. Actually, yeah, corpse tendril's on there. Yeah. Raised Skeleton, Skeletal Priest bonus damage increased to 30% instead of 20% like it was. It's going to be nice, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to actually fix minions in their current state. Mobs, especially at higher nightmare tiers, have really, really high health pools, and minions are just not putting out enough damage unless you have the Ring of Mendelin, in which case it's not the minions doing the damage, it's the ring doing the damage. And if you don't have that ring, like my first Ring of Mendelin dropped at like level 87 or 88. By that time, I'd already given up on minions because they just can't hold their own unless you have that ring. And then that ring only works correctly if you have the bugged out Bone Prison in your build to actually make it proc like it hopefully should. If they fix the Bone Prison, you know, lucky hit being broken, I think that minions are just effectively dead. There is one build that was put out a while ago, I think it was about a couple weeks ago, by Dry Bear. And he actually made a minion build that worked into the higher nightmare tiers that didn't have the Ring of Mendelin. And it's pretty impressive. And he did a lot of math and a lot of like trial and error to get it to work correctly. But again, it's very niche and it's very, very requiring you to have the correct gear setup and the correct aspect setup. So again, I don't know if this 10% buff with the Skeletal Priest bonus damage is going to be enough to actually save minion builds. But I could be wrong. And also the Raised Skeletal Priest is going to go up from healing 10% to 15%. Elusive bonus damage to vulnerable reduced by 3%. So it was 18%, now it's 15%. Transfusion healing on your minions went 45% to 60%. Drain Vitality Lucky Hit chance increased from 25% to 30%. Okay, that's kind of nice. Amplified damage increased from 9% to 12%. Oh, that's actually pretty good. So this is the one that whenever you have an enemy cursed, you do X percent damage. Used to be 9 was the cap, now it's 12 with the 3 points in. It's essentially like if you had a +1 on your like amulet or something to amplify damage, it would have already been at 12%. Now it would be at 15%. Now it would be at 16% because every point is worth 4 now. So actually, more and more plus amplified damage on your amulet could make this even better in the future. All right, Book of the Dead now. The Book of the Dead changes. I'm sorry, I have to go through this. The Book of the Dead changes. The first one is good. Everything else is shit. I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat it. The first one, whenever you're at a world boss and you die, your minions will automatically resummon whenever you respawn. That's the good. Here's the bad and ugly. Skeletal Warrior Defenders upgrade Thorns inherited you from 40% to 50%. Thorns on a Necromancer are not good once you hit like level 65, 70 plus. It's just not. The mobs have too high a health and you're relying on your minions inheriting off of your Thorns, which means now you have to use the Thorns chest piece to have enough Thorns to even make it worthwhile, which means you just gave up an aspect. It's just not worth it. Shadow Skeleton Mages require... okay, so basically it made it so every 5th cast they would fire an additional Shadow Bolt. It's not that big of a deal. You're not really relying on their damage. This might get you 1 additional Shadow Blight stack faster. That's all this is going to get you. Bone Skeleton Mages upgrade Fortify amount from 11% to 20%. This is when your Bone Skeletal Mages die because they take damage as they do damage. It's kind of like their own like personal, they thorns themselves. So when they die, you get 20% Fortify of your base health. But if you're going to use the Bone Skeletal Mages, you want to use the ones where after they've been alive for, I think it's 10 seconds, they get 40% increased damage. And you want to be spawning the Skeletal Priests to keep them healed so they can stay doing 40% increased damage. Ultimately, most people are going to use the Shadow Skeletal Mages anyways, or they're going to use the Cold Skeletal Mages because they give Essence and also chill stuff. Iron Golem upgrade requires slam from 5 to 4. Again, whenever you're using the Iron Golem, you don't want the first point, which is what this is. This is the first point of Iron Golem. The second point makes it so when he uses a slam, he causes vulnerability. That's what you want if you're going to use the Iron Golem anyways, because vulnerability is going to be way more beneficial than a random extra stun that does a couple thousand damage. This is why I said all of this could just not have happened, and I would have been happier to just not have had to read it in the first place. All right, Essence Glyph bonus now affects all damage instead of just core skills. This is really cool. It basically what it does, and this is actually going to help Shadow builds because Shadow Blight is not a core skill, but Shadow Blight does a lot of damage. And now this is going to make so it affects all damage instead of just core skills. Essence I have in my in most of my builds anyways, because it does a lot of just crit damage for free, and it's nice. And it's all based off of, I believe, Dexterity bot within the range. All right, aspects, and here's where the nerfs start coming in. Splintering aspect, which is the bone spear specific aspect, reduced from 50 to 100 down to 30 to 60. Yeah, so the math on it realistically is a 33% nerf on your damage from, or yeah, on your bonus damage from bone spear. This does hurt. This one hurts the most. This one and one paired down here with grasping veins, but we'll get to that in a second. 33% nerf on your main aspect for bone spear. Let that sink in for a second. This is a 33% nerf, but this is a wonderful thing, actually. So, hear me out. I know this is going to sound really weird, but this is not a bad thing. And the reason being is if they left it as it currently sat as of yesterday, before the patch went in, the scaling of the damage of Bone Spear in Season 1 was going to be absolutely astronomically insane. Like no other build in the entire game would ever be able to touch it. Already most builds still can't touch it, even with the nerfs. It's still going to have the fastest Uber Lilith kills. It's still going to have some of the fastest boss kills in the game. And it's still going to be perfectly fine, albeit a bit squishier when going through the dungeons, the high tier nightmare dungeons. It's still going to work perfectly fine. And the reason being is right here. Each minion drains 1 to 2 essence per second, but deals up to 75% increased damage. With no minions, this bonus applies to you and drains 5 essence per second. So you can have a constant 75% increased damage. So 33% damage nerf here, and where's the other one? This one here is roughly about a 7 to 8% damage nerf as well. So you're going to take about a 40 to 41% damage nerf. But Once you get this, the Great Feast, and you sock it into one of your pieces of jewelry, you're going to get a 75% buff. So you're actually going to be doing more damage than you're currently doing right now. And that's why I'm saying it's not as bad as people think, but Blizzard was like, hey, we're putting all these really good malignant hearts into the game, or malignant cores, into the game. So we need to dial back the damage because it's going to scale higher than it currently is anyways. So if we dial it back, we're going to make the game still a little more challenging and fun for the players instead of just going around one-shotting everything. Which by the time you get this malignant core and sock it into your gear, you're going to go around one-shotting everything anyways, because that's how powerful that is going to be. So realistically, this is not that bad of a nerf, because it's only going to be temporary, and then you're going to be stronger than you currently are anyways. All right, aspect of Plunging Darkness, bonus damage increased to 125%. So they're trying to buff minions and shadow and some of the blood bills, and trying to dial back bones. They're trying to bring the necromancer class as a whole up to this well-rounded kind of state that it would actually be ideal that you could play whatever build you choose and not have to be a slave to the meta. And I mean, even if you, so maybe you do prefer playing Bone Spear, because Bone Spear is fun to play, don't get me wrong. But if you want to try other builds, and you know, maybe you've played Bone Spear for about 100 hours or so, and you're like, I want to go play a different build. You want your builds to all feel relatively good. You don't want to go from playing the best build to playing the absolute worst build. And realistically, that build shouldn't be too bad. So just using the core skills as an example, you don't want to go play a Blight build and feel like you just can't do anything in the game because Bone Spear is just that much better. Or you don't want to play Sever and feel like this ability sucks, I have to go back to playing Bone Spear. So if they could bring all the other builds up at the same time and dial Bone back just a bit and make them all feel good, I think that would be the best thing possible for Necromancers. Which is why I say that these nerfs for Bone is really not as bad as everyone's thinking, because you can still go. And I actually watched Rob, I can't remember all the numbers after his name, but he went and he was like, let me go kill Uber Lilith. Killed it almost as fast. Nick 2 was the other one. He went and his time to kill Uber Lilith before today and after the patch that came in today were almost identical, like literally seconds off. So you're still going to be doing plenty of damage. It's just you're not going to be doing as much damage as you were, but you're still going to be able to kill everything basically just as fast. Maybe something that you used to one shot and will now take 2 Bone Spears instead of 1. Not a big deal. All right, Coldbringer's Blizzard aspect cooldown. Okay, so this is your Skeletal Mages casting Blizzard randomly. Unless they get minions online correctly, this is kind of null and void because it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're leveling with minions, wonderful aspect to have. Once you get to endgame, you generally are dropping minions unless they can figure that out. Aspect of Hungry Blood fires a Bloodlance, and let's reopen that tab real quick. All right, so Aspect of Hungry Blood now fires up to a maximum of 3 Bloodlances per cast. It didn't used to have a cap, so it has a chance to fire has been increased, but it still can only fire 3. Bloodlance, I really want it to work. I actually really liked Bloodlance, and I played it in the beta, and it was really fun. But it's gutted at the moment, and it feels really bad. Blood-soaked aspect, damage increased by, okay, so this is based off your power scaling as well for the power level of power item level of the piece of gear. So this will scale based off of the item itself. Aspect of ultimate shadow damage increased. Again, this is also scaled off of the item power. But it's actually, if you look at this one, like this one is this one's slight buff. This one's almost double the damage. Actually, no, this is more than double the damage. So this one is going to be significantly more damage. So this is actually really, really good. Grasping Veins, as we already saw, this one has been nerfed. It equates to about an 8% damage loss. Osseous Gale aspect bonus, Bone Storm. So this is the one that increases the duration of your Bone Storm for enemies hit, and it's just going to go from 8 seconds up to 10. Kind of nice if you play with it. I've never played with it because I find other aspects to be more beneficial than this one. Aspect of the damage bonus increased from 40% to 50%, which is kind of nice. Aspect of the Damned is the one that it works off of your Army of the Dead, so Yeah, that's kind of nice. Blood bathed aspect echo damage reduced from 60% to 50%. I don't actually know what this does. I'm not going to try and lie to you. I don't play a lot of blood builds because they just don't really scale well at endgame, because overpower doesn't scale as well as vulnerability. Aspect of reanimation, skeletal bonus damage increased from 30% to 40%. So this is a ring aspect, and the previous two today, 30% was the max. So basically, after you've had your skeleton spawn for at least 10 seconds, they do increase damage. So this is going to be one of the aspects that you're going to have on a minion-based build, especially a minion-based build that doesn't use the Ring of Mendelin, because Ring of Mendelin does not care about your minions' damage. That's all Ring of Mendelin damage, doing all the millions of damage. Items, Bloodless Scream Essence gained went from 5 up to 10, so basically doubled. I really wanted to like this item, and it was actually the very first unique I got was the Bloodless Scream. Right as soon as I got into World Tier 3, the very first Tree Whispers quest I did, first pack of mobs dropped it, and I'm like, oh my god, uniques will be raining from the sky. How freaking wrong I was. The next unique I got was like 8 or 9 levels later. They did not rain from the sky, but I've gotten like 4 or 5 of these. Anyways, I really wanted it to work, and I actually had it in one of my builds because it was better than any other weapon that I had, and it's actually kind of a cool weapon because it constantly regenerates your essence. Deathless Visage increased damage, so this is actually kind of nice. It's a very, very small increase of damage, but it is something that actually increases your damage because the damage from it is actually directly correlated with Bone Spear. Okay, so let's go over really quickly some of these Malignant Hearts. Well, this one are pretty cool. So check this out, and I think you're gonna like this one. So the Sacrilegious, walking near a corpse automatically activates an equipped corpse skill every second, dealing 30% reduced damage. If you walk near a corpse and you have Corpse Explosion on your bar, every 1 second it will pop Corpse Explosion, which will give you essence back for free. If you don't have Corpse Explosion on your bar, but you have Corpse Tendril on your bar, every second, I wonder if this works if it's on cooldown. Because if this works when it's on cooldown, you could literally continuously Corpse Tendril stuff every second, keeping them chain stunned forever. This can't work when they're on cooldown. This is something I'm going to have to check. I'm really curious about this because you could literally break the game with this. Like, you could chain CC every mob in the game minus bosses with this exact Malignant Core. That would be really cool. Okay, so next one. When at least 5 enemies are near you, gain an aura that automatically curses surrounding enemies with Decrepify for 15 seconds. Also really nice, especially if you're playing a blood build, because blood, like Blood Surge, you want to be in melee range, you're Hulk smashing the ground, and you know, everything's just kind of blowing up around you, right? If you have 5 or more enemies, which you're constantly going to have if you're playing a Blood Surge build anyways, they're going to be constantly like cursed with Decrepify for 15 seconds. I mean, they're not going to live for 15 seconds anyways, but let's say that they do. They're going to be taking, now it doesn't say what tier Decrepify, so if you don't have Decrepify learned, it's entirely possible that you just get tier 1 Decrepify for free. So it'll just constantly cast Decrepify if you're playing that build, which means if you were taking that build and say you don't need it for the cooldown reduction, but you just wanted it for the slow and the damage reduction, you could just not spec into it, have this Malignant Core take care of that for you, and then you can move on to other stuff, which will actually open up your build to more possibilities for more damage and possibly you know, more survivability in other ways. Like, you're able to put more points into Blood Mist, or you're able to put more points into some of the blood passive nodes to get yourself more like survivability. Not sure, but this, if it works where you don't have to have the ability learned, this could be really strong for a lot of builds. And 10% chance of inflicting fear. Yeah, this is junk. Don't use this one. So if you have 3 that you're going to use on a Necromancer, I would use this one, and this one, and this one, and then delete this one, because why would you want the mobs to run away from you? And whenever things run away when they're feared, they run in random directions. I want the mobs to stay closely grouped up so I can AoE blast them to death, whether it be Bone Spear, whether it be Blight, whether it be Sever, or Blood Surge. We're not going to talk about Blood Lance, it sucks. Yeah, I want them all grouped up so I can just blast them down. So this is just absolutely terrible. So those are the Malignant Hearts that are also going to synergize with all of the buffs and nerfs for the Necromancer. So I wish you the best of luck in Season 1. Keep an eye out. I'm going to be putting out a bunch of different guides, a bunch of different builds, and keep you up to date on the news as best as I can. I do work full-time job, so I might get the information out a little later than other people, but I will definitely do my best to get it out as soon as I get home and I have the time to do it. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. It helps the channel grow. It helps the YouTube algorithm to push the video, more people can see it, and I would really, really appreciate it. Happy hunting in season 1.